There comes a moment, quiet, unmarked. It's not a breakdown. It's not even sadness exact, it's just you wake up one morning, not in panic, but in stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't soothe, but unnerves. Coffee still brews, emails still arrive, but something in you no longer responds the way it used to. You don't recognize the person in the mirror. You find yourself drifting, detached from the things that once felt urgent, unmoved by goals you once clung to. You look around at the world and wonder, is this it? Wasn't joy, purpose, fire? Instead, you feel suspended, somewhere between meaning and meaninglessness. You've seen through it feels like betrayal, not of the world, but of something inside yourself. You no longer want to play the game, but you don't yet know the new rules. You scroll, you read, you stare out the window longer than you should. You say, I'm fine, but inside, you feel hollowed out, and the question keeps echoing beneath your chest. Why do I feel so blank, so flat, so distant from everything, even myself? Why does seeing the truth make the world feel so quiet? You haven't lost your mind, you've lost your mask. This isn't apathy, it's the aftermath, the disorientation that comes after you've stepped out of the dream. You're not depressed, you're not broken, you're somewhere ancient, somewhere few people talk about, and in that void, beneath the stillness, beneath the numbness, something is waiting. Not a lesson, not a promise, but a presence. A beginning that doesn't look like one. And maybe, just maybe, the silence you're standing in isn't the end, it's the clearing. So if what you just heard echoes something quiet and unspoken inside you, stay. Don't rush to understand. Don't rush to fix. Let this message unfold like a soft candle burning in the night. Because this isn't just another video about awakening. This is about what happens after the light, when the fireworks fade and all that's left is silence, uncertainty, and a you that no longer fits into the old costume. Stay with me until the end. This may be the first time someone truly names what you've been feeling. And at the end of this video, we'll explore what it means to begin again, not from ambition, but from alignment. At first, it feels like peace. After your awakening, whether triggered by crisis, loss, or insight, the noise dies down. You stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop trying to win a game you didn't create. And for a moment, it's a relief. No more proving, no more masks. But then something else creeps in. A slow erosion of everything that used to give your life structure. The ambition? Gone. The career ladder? Feels absurd now. The praise and recognition? Echoes that don't land anymore. You used to be fueled by goals. Make more, be more, show more. You measured your worth in achievements, milestones, or the look in someone else's eyes. Now, you wake up and don't want to do anything. Not out of laziness, but because nothing out there feels real anymore. Carl Jung called this the collapse of the ego, the moment when the self you carefully built no longer holds. It's not that you're falling apart, it's that the persona, the social mask you wore, is dissolving. And with it, all the systems that upheld it, the need to succeed, the fear of being left behind, the hunger for validation, the compulsion to keep going even when your soul is begging you to stop. At this stage, many people panic. They feel unmotivated, disconnected, even numb. They tell themselves, something's wrong with me. I used to care. Why don't I care anymore? But here's the secret. You stopped caring because the reasons you used to care were never truly yours. That fire inside you wasn't passion. It was pressure. That drive wasn't purpose. It was programming. And when the ego begins to melt, so does the illusion that your life's worth is tied to productivity. Jung saw this as essential. He didn't romanticize awakening. He said it clearly. You don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And this is the darkness you're now meeting. A life built on a false self, a treadmill you didn't realize you were on, a version of you that was created to survive, not to be whole. Now that version is fading. and with it, the systems of reward and punishment that kept it alive. You're not broken. You're shedding skin. You're entering a space between death and rebirth, where your old self is crumbling and your new self has not yet emerged. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it feels disorienting. But it's also sacred. This emptiness isn't the problem, it's the clearing. The soul doesn't want you to get back to normal. It wants you to begin again, from a place that's true. So let yourself drift for a while, because only in stillness can the next truth reveal itself. The illusion of progress, and why you stopped chasing it. There's something about this stage that feels shameful. You're not crying every day. You're not in a crisis. You're not falling apart. But you've lost the spark. You sit with your coffee in the morning, staring out the window. Not sad, not happy, just still. Maybe people around you have noticed. Are you okay? You used to be so full of ideas. You should get out more. They mean well, but they don't understand. Because how do you explain this strange in-between? That it's not depression, but it's not joy either. That you're not lost, but not exactly found. That your old motivation is gone, but it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like an emptiness waiting to be filled by something real. Carl Jung had a word for this: transition. He saw it not as a breakdown, but as a crossing. You're not lazy. You're not apathetic. You're not broken. You're being unmade, so you can become. This lack of motivation isn't a failure of willpower. It's a sacred pause. It's what happens when your soul refuses to keep performing the old roles. You're not supposed to be productive right now. You're supposed to be still, to feel, to listen. You see, for years, maybe decades, your energy came from the outside, from goals, from expectations, from deadlines, from people who needed you to be on. But once you've awakened, even slightly, to the truth of who you are, that external fuel stops working. You can't chase what doesn't feel true anymore. You can't pretend that promotions, applause, or people-pleasing are enough. And so, the old drive dies, not as a punishment, but as a permission. Your psyche is saying, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going back to sleep. This is the threshold. And in Jung's words, it's where the ego collapses, so the self can emerge. It's the liminal space, the cocoon, the sacred hallway between who you were and who you are becoming. And like all thresholds, it's uncomfortable. You'll want to fill it with noise. You'll feel the urge to get back to normal. You'll question yourself, what's wrong with me? But let me ask you this, what if nothing is wrong? What if this stillness is exactly what your soul has been waiting for? What if this is not the end of your fire, but the moment before a deeper flame is lit? You are not losing energy. You're redirecting it. You're withdrawing it from what no longer serves you and preparing to reinvest it into what actually matters. The world will call it regression, but Jung called it initiation. And only those brave enough to stay in this space without rushing to fix it will discover the quiet truth beneath the silence. You were never meant to stay in motion all the time. You were meant to transform. So if you feel disconnected, numb, or even strange in your own skin, don't pathologize it. Honor it. You are not falling apart. You are in sacred transition. And on the other side of this stillness is a life that finally fits your soul. The death of false desires, why you stopped wanting what you used to chase. There comes a moment, quiet, unexpected, when the things that once excited you don't anymore. You open your inbox and feel nothing. You look at your calendar and your chest tightens. You hear the old, "You got this," motivational speech in your mind, but it sounds hollow now. You used to chase these things: success, praise, being seen as capable, dependable, strong. But now, even checking the boxes feels like betrayal, not of others, of yourself. This is not laziness. This is not burnout. This is your soul withdrawing from performance. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But the price of that privilege is this: letting die the version of you who was fueled by validation. You see, most of us were taught to run on ego energy, the kind that's loud, urgent, achievement-driven. The kind that says, you should be doing more. You're falling behind. Keep going, or they'll forget you. Ego motivation isn't evil. It got you through hard times. It built your career. It kept the bills paid and the appearances maintained. But it's borrowed fuel. It burns fast. It burns out. And when awakening begins, the ego's gas tank empties, and you look around and wonder, why can't I care like I used to? Because your soul is no longer interested in performance. It's not here to impress. It's not here to win. It's here to be. The soul's motivation is different. It doesn't scream. It doesn't bargain. It whispers. And sometimes, especially after awakening, it goes quiet for a long while. Not to abandon you, but to unhook you from the noise, from the shoulds, from the identity that was built to please everyone but you. This is what Jung called the death of the persona. That socially acceptable mask you wore for decades. When it dissolves, so do the things it used to chase. The goals that made sense 5 years ago feel meaningless now. The social roles that once gave you purpose feel tight, like clothes that no longer fit. And that's okay. The part of you that no longer wants to perform is the part that's finally telling the truth. Your soul is not lazy. It's just not willing to sell itself for applause anymore. It wants peace over pressure, truth over performance, meaning over metrics. But here's the challenge. The world doesn't know what to do with this, so it will try to convince you that you've lost your edge, that you've given up, that you've stopped caring. But that's not true. You haven't stopped caring. You've just started caring about something deeper, and right now, that depth is still forming. So let it, because soon, something will rise. Not the old hustle, not the frantic proving, but a quiet inner pull. A soul-led yes, and that yes won't come from fear of falling behind. It will come from alignment, not the need to perform, but the desire to express something real. So if the fire in you has changed color, if the roar has faded to a hum, don't panic. Your soul is not gone. It's just done pretending. The sacred pause before rebirth. Why you're not supposed to feel clear yet. There's a moment after awakening that no one really prepares you for. It's not dramatic, not mystical, not filled with downloads or cosmic guidance. It's quiet, still, and deeply confusing. You're not who you used to be, but you don't yet know who you're becoming. You've left the old shore, but no new land is in sight, just the vast unknown, and you're floating. Welcome to the sacred pause. Carl Jung called this the liminal space, the in-between, the cocoon, the waiting room between identities. It feels like nothing is happening. But what if this nothing is everything? Because here's the truth the world forgets. Clarity does not come before transformation, it comes through it. And the first stage of transformation is death. Not physical, but psychological. The death of roles, the death of performance, the death of answers that once brought you comfort. No one tells you that awakening will first dismantle you. It strips away the scaffolding that once held you up, your ambitions, your titles, your definitions of success. And once those fall, you're not empty, you're open. But openness doesn't feel safe at first. It feels like fog. It feels like, what now? It feels like failure, but it's not. It's the psyche rearranging itself. It's your nervous system resetting. It's your soul saying, we are not building this life from fear anymore. In a society addicted to clarity, certainty, and direction, this sacred pause feels unbearable. You're expected to know, to act, to produce, to perform. But your soul has a different rhythm. It moves in seasons, not seconds, in symbols, not spreadsheets. So if you feel unclear right now, that's exactly where you're meant to be, because real clarity cannot be forced. It emerges like morning mist slowly lifting, like a whisper after a long silence. You don't find your new self by searching harder. You find it by becoming quiet enough to notice what's been waiting. The sacred pause is not the absence of progress. It's the ground of becoming, the soil before the seed, the winter before the bloom, the silence before the music. So stop trying to rush clarity. Stop judging your stillness. Stop calling your rest failure. You're not behind. You're becoming. Right now, your only task is to stay present, to honor the pause, to resist the temptation to rebuild the old self just because the new one hasn't fully arrived yet. Jung reminded us that we don't awaken by imagining light, but by making darkness conscious. And this moment, the fog, the stillness, the not knowing, is the threshold where darkness begins to give birth to truth. So if you're in the pause, stay. Not forever. Just long enough to hear what your old life was too loud to let you feel. Something new is forming. But it's time to trust. The myth of constant purpose, why not knowing, is sacred. There is a moment when all your plans fall silent. The purpose you once clung to feels distant, and the future you worked so hard to build now feels irrelevant. You're not lazy, you're not lost. You're simply crossing a line that most people never reach. Carl Jung had a word for this phenomenon, enantiodromia, when something, after reaching its extreme, turns into its opposite. You've spent years striving, trying to improve, succeed, achieve. You were lit by urgency, passion, even obsession. You were always chasing a horizon that never stayed still. But now that fire has gone quiet. And instead of pushing forward, all you want to do is stop, withdraw, breathe, question everything. This shift feels wrong in a world that worships direction. They say, find your passion, stay hungry, keep char. But what if the soul doesn't want to chase? What if the collapse of purpose is not a breakdown, but a breakthrough? Jung taught us that when the ego reaches its limit, the soul steps in. And the soul doesn't speak in goals. It speaks in symbols, dreams, silence. It moves slowly, not toward achievement, but toward meaning. That's the difference. The ego wants clarity so it can stay in control. The soul wants truth, even if it means entering the unknown. So if you've lost your why, if you've stopped car, if your old life feels like a performance you no longer wish to play, take heart. You are not broken. You're simply being called into a deeper alignment. Jung understood that true transformation often begins when the old narrative collapses. The space it leaves behind becomes sacred. Because in that silence, something ancient and intimate can finally speak. This is not the death of purpose. It's the composition of false purpose. All the motivations that once came from fear, insecurity, comparison, are being burned away. Not to leave you empty, but to make SIP a quieter one, a cleaner one that doesn't beg for validation. The soul's purpose isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, stay still, rest here, I am. And when it's time, it will rise. But not as a to-do list, not as an obligation, not as an identity. It will rise as a pull, a quiet yes, a sacred this feels you're not here to constantly produce meaning. You're here to become available to it. So don't fear this in between. Don't rush to fill it with new go. This is a holy unwriting. And from it, a deeper truth is being composed. The sacred stillness, when doing nothing, is the most important thing you can do. It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't been here. This strange, quiet pause where the world keeps spinning, but your soul doesn't want to move. It's not laziness, it's not apathy, it's not burnout in the usual sense. It's a sacred stillness. You wake up and feel like you should be doing something, anything. But deep down, every action feels wrong, misaligned, empty. And that's because, as Carl Jung said, in each of us there is another whom we do not know. That hidden part, the one you've pushed down for decades, is beginning to rise. This is the part of you that was told, "You're too much. You're too sensitive. Don't dream like that. Stay busy. Stay useful." So you adapted. You learned to perform, to succeed, to stay quiet when it hurt. But now, in this stillness, those buried parts are waking up. This is what Jung called integration, the beginning of healing through wholeness. And wholeness is not built through action. It is built through presence. When you stop distracting yourself, when you stop numbing with tasks, noise, praise, the unconscious steps forward. And what rises first is not always beautiful. Grief, regret, old rage, loneliness you forgot you carried. The shadow arrives not to punish you, but to be seen, embraced, and finally brought home. This is why the silence matters. Because only in the stillness can these forgotten parts speak. The world might call this doing nothing, but in truth, you are doing the most important thing of all, becoming whole. This kind of inner work doesn't have milestones. It doesn't come with praise. There is no applause for crying in the dark, for admitting you feel lost, for facing the ghosts you thought you'd buried. But this is real healing. Not the kind that fixes you to function better, but the kind that makes you whole enough to no longer need fixing. So if you feel like you're in a void right now, trust it. This is the chrysalis stage, the cocoon, the compost. And though the outer world sees stillness, within you, something ancient is shifting. Let it breathe. Observe. Let the memories come. Let the silence stretch. Let the feelings pass through like weather, because this is how the soul remembers itself, not through performance, but through presence, not through motion, but through stillness. So, if today you did nothing, if you simply breathed through the ache, sat with the confusion, felt your pulse and stayed, you have done something sacred. And this stillness, it's not the end. It's the space where truth grows, ready to step closer to that truth. When the true self begins to lead, there comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, when something inside you whispers, "I can't live like this anymore." It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It's not a surge of motivation or a fiery calling. It's more like a gentle letting go, of trying to prove, of trying to impress, of trying to outrun the quiet truth within. You no longer chase recognition. You step away from invisible ladders, not because you've given up, but because something old inside you has died. And with its passing, a different rhythm begins to stir. A quieter rhythm, a deeper pulse, one that doesn't push you to act, but invites you to return to yourself. When the true self begins to lead, life no longer feels like a stage. It becomes a kind of sacred ritual. You stop acting to prove. You start acting to express what's real. You cook, not to impress anyone, but because care lives in your hands. You write, not because you want to be heard, but because something in you must speak. You say no, not out of resentment, but because your energy no longer aligns with certain spaces. Every action starts to carry meaning, not because of its result, but because it is in harmony with who you are. Carl Jung called this individuation, the sacred becoming of the whole self. When you no longer move from ego, but from inner wholeness. It's a different kind of living. You no longer plan to control, you listen to respond. The drive is no longer powered by fear of missing out, but by inner resonance. Motivation becomes devotion, not to success, but to truth. From the outside, you may appear simpler, less flashy, less busy, less visible. But inside, you are deeper than ever. This is a quiet transformation. No one may notice, but you will. Because every breath, every choice, now flows from a sacred place, your true self. And from that place, things begin to move. Not because you must do them, but because you can't not do them. A new life begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself. There is a kind of betrayal that leaves no bruise. No one sees it. No one calls it out. but it haunts your breath, your choices, your mornings. It's the moment you say yes when your body says no. It's staying when your soul is already walking away. It's smiling when you want to scream. It's explaining yourself when silence would have been sacred. This betrayal is self-abandonment. And it happens, not in one grand moment, but through thousands of small, silent concessions. You become someone others can admire, but you no longer recognize yourself. You know that feeling, don't you? That hollow ache after pleasing everyone in the room, and realizing you're the only one who didn't feel heard. That exhaustion after meeting all expectations, except your own. But here's the shift. At some point, you get tired of disappearing, tired of editing your truth into something more digestible, tired of waiting for someone to see the version of you you've buried under politeness, usefulness, and fear. And in that sacred fatigue, something begins to stir. Not a rage, not a rebellion, but a return. A return to yourself. It starts small. You leave the conversation that drains you. You decline the invitation that feels like performance. You stop reaching out just to stay relevant. You stop explaining your silence. You begin to trust that the people meant for you will find you even in your stillness. And those who drift away were only ever drawn to your mask. When you stop abandoning yourself, you reclaim the one relationship that determines all others, the one you have with your own soul. From this place, you no longer ask, "What do they want me to be?" You ask, "What is truest in me right now?" And suddenly, the fog begins to lift, not all at once, but steadily. You begin to hear your own voice, not the one trained to be agreeable, but the one buried beneath years of conditioning. You begin to feel desire again, not the frantic hunger of the ego, but the steady longing of a soul finally given room to breathe. A new life begins not when everything is fixed, but when you stop negotiating with your own truth just to make others comfortable. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But I'll add this. The turning point of that privilege is when you finally stop abandoning yourself. In rooms where you're unseen, in conversations that dim you, in roles that shrink you. You don't need to burn bridges, you just need to walk toward what feels real, and that walk begins the moment you say, gently, clearly, and finally, "I will no longer leave myself behind, not for love, not for approval, not even for safety." And in that moment, the world begins to rearrange. Not around your performance, but around your presence. That is where real life begins. You thought something was wrong with you, that the stillness was failure, that the emptiness meant you'd lost your spark. But what if I told you this is not the end? This is the beginning of a deeper, quieter, more sacred life. Losing motivation after awakening isn't a breakdown. It's a breaking open, a dismantling of all the false reasons you used to move, the proving, the pleasing, the performing. And underneath that collapse is something truer than you've ever known. Your soul whispering, "Come back." You're not here to be endlessly productive. You're not here to chase recognition or fit into someone else's story. You're here to live from the inside out, to breathe with your own rhythm, to move not out of fear, but from alignment. This is what Carl Jung understood so deeply. When the ego collapses, the self rises. Not with noise, but with presence. This isn't laziness, it's sacred recalibration. It's your inner world restoring balance after a lifetime of striving for the wrong things. The masks fall, the roles dissolve, and slowly, painfully, beautifully, you begin to remember who you are without them. You're not here to conquer, you're here to be real. And that's why this moment matters. This pause, this stillness, this lack of motivation you keep judging. It's not dysfunction. It's a doorway, a threshold where the old self bows out and the true self begins to breathe again. So if you're in the middle of that fog, in between identities, drifting without clear direction, Don't panic. You are exactly where you need to be. Because this is how the soul begins its work. Not in urgency, but in honest silence. And from that silence, a new kind of energy will emerge. Not the fuel of fear, but the flow of truth. Not performance, but presence. Not ambition, but devotion to what is real. So take heart. This isn't the end of your fire. It's the moment you learn to burn from within. With no script to follow, no applause to chase, no mask to wear. Just you. Fully you. Finally you. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you experienced this quiet unraveling, this strange stillness after awakening? Are you still in the pause? Or beginning to feel something new stir inside you? Share your story in the comments, even if it's just a single word. Because your voice might be the mirror someone else needs, a reminder that they are not alone. If this message touched something deep within you, don't let it fade. Share it with someone who may be walking this same quiet path. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Here we don't chase noise, we listen to the soul. We don't preach answers, we ask better questions. Together, we explore the sacred work of becoming whole. Let's keep walking. Not faster, but deeper. And remember, your stillness is not your weakness. It is the beginning of your becoming.